We're gonna take it from dirty and swirled out to glossy and protected. Before we start correcting, we're gonna need to remove all of this dirt, contaminants, and old waxes from the paint. Otherwise, we're just grinding dirt into the surface and smearing old wax around. First, we're gonna hit it with a high foaming pH neutral soap. This pre-wash is gonna loosen up all the dirt before we even touch the paint. Then we're gonna always use the 2-bucket method, one for clean water, one for rinsing, and even a third for wheels. This keeps contaminants out of your wash process. Next, I'm gonna show you how to properly remove embedded contaminants that a regular wash won't touch. We're gonna clay the surface to grab any bonded contamination left behind, and now the paint is 100% clean and ready for correction. Take a look at these swirls. This is what makes paint look dull and worn out. The one-step paint enhancement is gonna remove these and bring back a deep, glossy shine. We're gonna use a DA polisher with a soft finishing pad and a one-step polish. This combo is perfect for removing light defects while leaving a flawless finish in one pass. With this polish, we're not gonna use one that has any fillers in it and ensure that the surface is properly prepared for the ceramic coating. All right, so I know you guys have heard about the 2-bucket wash method, but we're actually gonna be using 3. And unless you can't read, I think you guys already have an idea of why we're gonna be using 3. So the 2-bucket wash method really just goes for the wash and rinse. We're talking about the paint there. We're talking about using a 2-bucket wash method. You want one that's got some soap and water in it, about 2 to 3 gallons of water, and a couple ounces of soap in there, depending on the soap that you're using, and then a microfiber wash mitt or pad. And I like to use 2 actually when I'm washing. It saves you a lot of time, and it's kind of just honestly a detailing hack I wish I learned sooner that I think everybody should be implementing. And then we have a rinse bucket. So after you've gone through and washed a panel off or a couple panels, you want to go back and dip it in the rinse one to get any dirt off that you've grabbed with this off the vehicle. And then these down here are called grit guards. They keep the dirt from coming back up to the top, so it's holding all the dirt down to the bottom. And then you dip back in here after you've used the rinse bucket to rinse off any dirt on the mitt. That way you're starting again with a clean mitt to go to the next panel. And then obviously you're going to do the wheels separately, because the grime that builds up on the wheels and around that area of the vehicle is not going to be good. So you definitely don't want to do those, because it can definitely do a lot of damage. All right, now that the car is soaking in the wash, we're gonna let this soak for 2 to 3 minutes. And while that's happening, we're actually gonna rinse off these wheels and fender wells, and then we're gonna get started on the wheels and knock those out. Once we get around and done with the wheels, then we're gonna work on the paint. We're gonna rinse all of this off and get any loose contaminants as the soap is picked up and loosened up off the car, and then we can actually get through it in the hand wash. All right, so here we're gonna use a non-acid wheel and tire cleaner, and I should probably pump up the IK sprayer, give you guys an idea how this actually works. But it's actually really handy, so you don't have to hurt your hands squirting all day long when you remember to pump it up like this. Anyways, yes, we're gonna use a non-acid wheel cleaner on here. You definitely don't want this to dry on the wheel. If you let it dry on the wheel, you can definitely be left with stains and they won't look good. But it can work on the fender liner, it works on the tires, it works on the wheels, it breaks down brake dust really well. Things are really good. It also depends on the kind of brakes you're using. If it's a ceramic brake, then you probably want to go with all-purpose cleaner instead of non-acid wheel cleaner. But regardless, it will still do a lot of work for you. And then, so we're just gonna soak it here. We want it to have enough on there so it doesn't dry quickly in the sun, but we don't want too much where we're wasting product, obviously. We just need to have enough here to work with. So that's looking pretty good. We're gonna get the fender liner a little bit. And then as you guys can tell, I have a bunch of different kinds of brushes in here. So we got the big brush is the easy detail brush. We got a tire scrubbing brush, baby easy detail brush, and a microfiber sponge. And I'm gonna use all of these things on these wheels. I change up the kind of brushes and stuff I'm using depending on the kind of wheel we're working on. But this gives you an idea with these crazy little spokes and stuff like that. I definitely need this guy. I'm gonna wipe down the whole face of the tire with that. You know what, we're gonna scrub the tire obviously. And I'm gonna try and use this guy in here to get back in the barrel as far as possible. And then I actually have another one over there I'm gonna grab to scrub the fender liners. But all right, now it's time to start the 2-bucket wash method now that we've finished up the wheels and got all the dirty stuff out of the way. So it's been completely rinsed off. As you can see, there's just water on the car now. And so we don't want too much water on the car also, because that creates too much resistance when you're washing it, and that'll actually create more drag, which can create more scratches. And so what we want to do is have the proper amount of soap and water mixture. And what I like to do is use 2 different mitts at the same time. And you always have both your hands on the car, so you might as well have a wash mitt in both of them. But this is really the fastest, most effective way to wash the car. And just go like that. And I have a step ladder on the other side of the car. I probably should have pulled it around to show you guys, but just to give you guys an idea on how we wash the car and the most effective way to do that. But I will pull out the ladder in a second and really do the whole car. But here, we're actually going to take these in here now that we've done the panel. We're going to rinse them off, get all the contaminants off of them. get all that out, and then we're gonna soak up the soap. Get all that out, no more dirt and contaminants. All that's gonna go to the bottom, get stuck under that grit guard, and now we've got nice clean mitts, fresh soap on. And then you keep these what did you can. Come back to it. Alrighty, now that you know how to wash a car, we're going to get into how to properly decontaminate it. And so there's a couple things you're going to need here to decontaminate the paint. You've probably heard of clay bar before, so first we're going to talk about that. These here are clay bars. This purple one here that I have is a medium grade clay bar, and the white one I have here is a fine grade clay bar. They do the same thing, they just pull out different size contaminants. So we'll talk mainly about the medium grade here since I have it open already. The medium grade is obviously a little bit more aggressive and going to pull out those bigger contaminants, and the white one is a little bit softer, which can grab those finer contaminants that are a little bit deeper in there, but they're smaller. So when you're using this, though you are pulling the contaminants out, they are getting stuck in the clay bar, and even though you're going to be using a lubricant, so I'll show you here, I use this called Optimum No Rinse, ONR, and you use 1 ounce of that product per gallon of water, so you can only imagine how little product I need to make this bottle here. It's a very versatile product, not only used for clay lube, but in this application we're going to talk about clay lube. So even though you're using that and you're spraying the clay bar with it, and you're keeping it lubricated as well as the surface that you're working on, you are going to be keeping those contaminants into the clay bar and wiping them across the paint, which can leave a little bit of marring. It's going to look foggy or cloudy a little bit, not necessarily see the scratches that they're causing, but it does cause minor scratches. So anytime you use a clay bar, you do want to polish afterward. You do want to get those contaminants out of your paint. You need to do that so they don't continue eating through your paint, but it's not going to, the surface isn't going to look pretty until you get it polished. So anytime you clay, make sure you're polishing afterward. So a way to not have to polish as much is to use a clay mitt. These are a lot less aggressive than the actual clay bars, and you use it the same way with the clay lube. And with either of these, also you can do it after your wash process with your soap water, just to keep in mind. But right now it's pretty hot outside, so I decided it's best to do it indoors. That way it doesn't dry up on the paint and create a mess for us. So, and then after you're done claying it, removing the contaminants, you're going to wipe it with an edgeless towel. You can see there's no edges on here, and that way you're not creating any micro scratches as you're wiping off the decontaminated area with the clay lube. Same as washing, you always want to go from the top down. You don't want to risk bringing any contaminants up to a dirtier area. And in most cases, I would have already started rinsing the clay mitt again and getting any contaminants off. But in this case, this car has 0 contaminants on it. I just got a small piece right there. I just saw come up. A little piece of tar, but there's literally barely anything in this vehicle. You could rub your hand on it beforehand and it felt perfectly smooth. Maybe every 6 inches or so you felt a small little nub, but this is already super smooth. You get an idea, just rinse it off like this. If you want, you can fill up a bucket with rinseless wash and use that and then wipe it off, but in my opinion it's kind of just a waste of water when you could just wipe it down like this. We're going to polish the area anyways, obviously. You want to remove as much as you can, and then I would wipe it with isopropyl alcohol to remove any solvents, or any of the polymers that are in this clay lube. That what keeps it as a lubricant is also going to keep your polish from working properly. So you got to remove that before polishing isopropyl alcohol or a paint prep. But if you're not in the business of wasting your money, I suggest using isopropyl alcohol. I can actually hear a little bit of that sandpaper up here. For reference, this is what clay marring is, and it's completely normal. You guys can see that foggy, cloudy look on the surface of the paint. It leaves a little bit of that scratch and those minor scratches behind. Once that polish clears that right out, really it should be no problem to remove unless you're improperly claying and not cleaning the contaminants off your mitt or your clay bar often enough. But just to give you guys an idea, don't be scared when this happens after you clay. Just know that you are going to need to polish afterwards if you want this to look good.